this one first, guys. So obviously we know what everybody's talking about, what everybody wants to know about. Eric O'Brien with a super chat about it. Thank you, Eric, for the super chat. But he said, how worried should we be about Keon's visit to Alabama? We have an intel piece on this yesterday on Irish Breakdown, the message board. That's why you should be a premium member. Essentially, it's this, guys. Notre Dame was well aware of this visit beforehand. Keon has communicated it to Notre Dame. He's been very open and honest with Notre Dame. There are some people around him that just want him to be certain of his decisions, the other places, et cetera, which is going to lead him to visit some of the schools he's interested in. I expect him, obviously, he's going to be visiting Alabama today. There's people reporting it's a 3-day visit. That's a little misleading. That's kind of like saying an unofficial is a 3-day thing. It's really you get in, drive up Friday afternoon, evening, you're there, then you have the next day, and then you kind of get up the next morning and drive back. So that's kind of what the 3-day visit looks like. Notre Dame sources that I have and sources around Keon that know Keon, they all seem to be pretty confident that when it's all sudden he's going to end up at Notre Dame. But at the same time, I think it would be a bit. I mean, if I'm going to sit there and tell everybody, Ryan, that no, nothing to worry about, nothing at all for a kid to visit an edge rusher to visit Alabama. Nothing to see here. I think that would also be as misguided as the sky is falling and oh, he's gone and all that stuff. Those are two extremes that I would encourage people to not take hold of. I think it's one of those things where feel confident about the position Notre Dame has put themselves in, but also be real, look at and say, hey, when Alabama puts their target on the kid, they've got a great success rate, and we're going to learn a lot about whether or not this coaching staff can keep him. But yes, are we concerned about it to the degree that if they weren't a player at all, he wouldn't visit, right? So, I mean, that's kind of where things are. So Notre Dame feels good about where they stand with him. People around Keon, people that know Keon, feel that at the end he's definitely all Notre Dame. However, he is taking the trip. And anytime a kid goes to Alabama, Ryan, you'd be foolish to just completely dismiss it as no big deal, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. I think that, it's definitely something worth talking about. There's no doubt about it, right? I mean, you have a committed kid that's going to what has been at times a dynasty under Nick Saban, right? So
sure.
it's a fact that we have to deal with. There's no doubt about it. My biggest pushback is that, one, our intel is our intel, right? Like that we think that Keon Keeley is very solid in Notre Dame. The other part of it is that this is not the first time we're talking about this, right? Like we've talked about this with Alabama before. We talked about this with the University of Florida before.
Right. Ohio
State. We were going to keep talking about it. The point blank to this is that Keon Keeley is a legit 5-star top 10 player in this year's class. And until he signs on the dotted line, people are going to keep coming after him. Okay. And the one thing I also want to say is that there's a lot of people, and I've seen it on the message board, on Twitter, all over the place, that are saying like, oh, well, he's obviously not locked in because he's taking this visit. I am going to say this. This young man is a 17-year-old kid that has other people around him, right? He doesn't make every single decision for himself. There is some influence to the support system that is around him. So let's not paint him as that. He doesn't believe in Notre Dame. He's not locked into Notre Dame. Right. That doesn't have to be true. So let's chill.
We could say, yeah, he's not locked in from the standpoint of he's taking visits, but at the same time, look, I guess my frustration is do I want every kid that's committed to Notre Dame to stay committed? Yeah, but it doesn't make him a bad kid, or because otherwise is Austin Novosad a bad kid?
Right, because he's committed to Baylor right now and taking visits.
Yeah, Notre Dame's flipped kids before, right? This is part of the look. The reality is this is big boy football, right? Bingo. Notre Dame fans have been begging for years. We've got to get more 5-stars. Got to get more.
This is what happens.
Well, this is what happens.
Yeah, it comes with the territory.
Yes. And if you're a 17-year-old kid who's an elite football player and Alabama, and you're from Florida, the South, and Alabama likes you, look, if you're, it's kind of like this. If the best academic institution in the country isn't interested in you for your chosen field, you'd be foolish to not at least give them some consideration, right? And that's what this is. Now, I believe that the main influencers around Keon, from everything we know, are pro Notre Dame.
Sure.
And so I think that bodes well for him. I think Keon is pro Notre Dame, but I also think there's people around him that say, hey, look, I just want to make sure that this decision is being made with all the data and all the facts and all those type of things. So end of the day, should people be concerned about it? Yeah. Anytime Alabama pushes for a kid, there's cause for concern, but this isn't a situation where it's just a matter of time and the sky is falling and all that other kind of stuff. I would encourage you not to do that. I don't anticipate Keon coming out of this visit flipping his commitment. I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
I don't think he's going to come out of his commitment and say, I'm all Notre Dame. All right. I just think people were going to be along for the ride. Okay. Yep. And Alabama's not going to stop. If Keon Keeley said the day after his visit, I am all 100% Notre Dame, that's not going to stop Alabama from calling. And if he stops answering, that's going to stop Alabama from sending coaches to a school. That they didn't get to this point where they've got like 6 titles in the last 13 years by just being like, oh, okay, you're not interested right now. All right, we'll move on. Right. So that's what happens in big boy football. So Notre Dame has to stay on top of it. There can be no period between now and signing day that Notre Dame doesn't treat him like they have to treat him like an uncommitted player. Right.
Sure,
that's that. I'm not saying he is. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when a kid commits, there's always going to be a change in your contact. Right. That's what I'm more referring to. That can't happen with Keon from now until signing day. They need to talk to him and engage with him like he's a kid that they still have to convince, because to a degree they still do, to a degree, because there are other schools that are going to keep calling and keep coming and keep chasing, because
and all the way until they sign.
Yes. Honestly, I mean, I would argue he's the best prospect in high school right now. In my opinion.
You would have an argument if you wanted to.
Right. And I know there's the quarterback. Look, to me, there's no more dominant, high ceiling player in the country right now than Keon Keeley, in my opinion. And he's got the proven production to show it. Mm-hmm. So people aren't just going to back off that kid. They're just not, right? Just like Georgia's going to keep trying to talk to Arch Manning and all these other type of things, right? That's just the reality of it. Just like Notre Dame's still trying to flip kids that are committed to other schools, right?
Right. Yeah.
You think Notre Dame stopped calling Jason Moore just because he's committed to Ohio State?
Not a chance.
No.
Not a chance.
Right? So that's the reality of it.
I'll say this too, is that there's a lot of schools that get a little territorial with this type of stuff, right? Sure. So Keon Keeley's out of the state of Florida. Do you think that, for one, Alabama, Florida, they all want Keon Keeley because he's a fantastic football player? But also, let's not be in your side to think that, like, wow, Notre Dame came down and got a kid right out of her backyard, and that doesn't piss him off a little bit. Like, let's be honest about it.
And not just piss him off, concern him.
Sure.
I mean, we've talked about this before. The last thing that these schools in the South want is for kids in the South to realize they can go to Notre Dame and get the education, which everybody knows about, but also play at elite football and be high draft picks.
Right.
The last thing that they want is for a kid like Keon Keeley to go to Notre Dame and be a top 5 draft pick. Yep. That would be really bad news for them, because now all of a sudden Notre Dame's going to go into this thing saying, hey, like Marcus Freeman has said this, right? Look, we need to show kids that we can play. You can come here to play championship at elite level. We can get you in the NFL and you get a great education. Right now, Notre Dame is only doing really one of those at a truly elite level. They're trending in the right direction in the other two, but they're not able to compete with the Bamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States yet when it comes to championships, because they don't have one since '88, and producing the high level draft picks. Why do you think Harry Hiestand has recruited so well over the years? Is it just because of his force of personality or his reputation amongst O-line people? He's the best coach? No, because the results are you go play for him, you're going to be a high draft pick.
Right.
I mean, sure. Ryan, how many offensive linemen have you talked to that said that? Like almost everyone that's any good?
Everyone,
right?
Yeah.
So that stuff matters. And so at the end of the day, these things won't change until you get to the point where you can be on the same footing as Alabama when it comes to selling those 3 things. And so Notre Dame has to find a unique pitch with Keon. Hey, go there and be the next so-and-so, or come here and be the first Keon Keeley. Mm-hmm. Right. That's going to be the reality. But help us accomplish something that's going to make you a legend, as opposed to just being the next guy in line to win championship number 8 at Alabama, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the pitch, and hopefully it works. We'll see. But look, guys, I would just encourage you all. I don't have a problem asking questions about Keon. He's a star. Of course, we're going to talk about Keon.
Right.
But I would just say, try not to get on the emotional roller coaster with this one. Same thing with Peyton Bowen. because there's nothing we can do about it, right? And we'll give you if there's intel to give. I promise you, we'll give it, and we'll do our due diligence to find it. We're not going to blow smoke and say, "Oh, don't worry about it, don't sweat it." That's not what we're doing for him or Peyton Bowen.
Mhm.
But we also are going to tell you, look, here's the reality. Because if we really think a kid's going to flip, I'll tell you. I mean, just go back last summer and listen to what I said about Amorian Walker every single time his name came up. Like, I don't think this kid signed with Notre Dame, right? Because we knew the circumstances. So that's where I'm at with this one. So hopefully that addresses the Keon Keeley stuff. And I know there's a lot of questions about it. And I didn't want to just dismiss it, Ryan, and be like, hey, we're not going to talk about it. You know, I had said that in the chat. I was like, you know what? We need to talk about it, right? Because
Sure.
I just it's going to be addressed, and people want to hear about it. So I did want to give that the due diligence, and that's why we chose to start things off with it and talk about it and address it, and hopefully that sort of satisfies everyone's appetites for those questions.
And if it hasn't, you can go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. There's a
There you
long
go.
thread on Keon
Oh,
Keeley.
yes.
Yeah,
And we've
exactly.
both interacted in it. Some of us have been a little bit pithy with it. I don't want to point fingers at anybody or anything like that. But, we'll try to give honest feedback about it and let you know how we feel. And if there comes a point in time where we'll get concerned, just like we did on the board with Dante Moore, we'll let you know.
Sure.
Right? And we'll let you know for sure.